Shadowverse Evolve, the physical adaptation of the extremely popular digital card game, has now been out for over a year, and over 2 years for the Japanese print. In that time, the Western release has seen 9 booster sets and achieved middling popularity. Now, I think there's a few reasons for this, which I won't get into. However, there is, I feel, a shining light of potential in the game that could set it apart from its competitors. That being the Western print exclusive Gloryfinder mode. Gloryfinder is Cygames' attempt to try and capture the MTG EDH commander market, and I think it's actually a brilliant idea. However, there's some major flaws in how it was implemented. For those who don't know, Magic the Gathering, or MTG, Commander format is a 4-player casual rule set where you can only have 1 copy of any card in your deck. You also choose a Commander card, which is available to play at any time. Shadowverse Evolve Gloryfinder borrows many of the same rules, and it is clear that the game was actually designed from the ground up to allow multiple players. Lots of cards say something like, X happens to all opponents, which is a weird wording to use if the game was just meant to be 1v1. The rule set of Gloryfinder is as follows: 50 cards in a deck with no duplicates, 20 cards in an Evolve deck with no duplicates, plus 1 leader card, and plus 1 card of that class as your glory card. Start with 3 play points, and finally, also most importantly, you can construct your deck using cards from any class. Here's where the problem lies. Although the ability to use cards from any class seems like a good idea to encourage fun synergies and combos, what it actually does is make every deck exactly the same. Players find an overpowered or OTK combo, which exists and is reasonably easy to pull off, and then there's no point building your deck any other way. Additionally, why wouldn't you just fill your deck with every single generically good card? I'm talking about cards like Bahamut, Olivia, Merlin, heck, Crazed Executioner is also good. Also, why wouldn't you just put every single Gloryfinder exclusive card in your deck? There's stuff like Grand Summoning, Lena, Odin, super powerful cards which every deck should run if possible, even if you can't get the full class bonus. So, once you're past the pre-constructed decks and start trying to customize for yourself, every deck becomes the same. Why wouldn't every deck just run Deepwood Anomaly OTK? I think this is part of the reason why Gloryfinder has not taken off. And I also think this is why Gloryfinder will never take off. Unless there's a very simple rule change we can make that blows the whole format wide open. Pick a class, and you can only use cards from that class, plus neutrals. When our group implemented this rule, it changed everything. Decks from different classes were now unique from each other. We saw more variation in card lists based on players' preferred playstyles. And decks were also easier to make now that you were confined to class cards. More thematic as well. Most importantly though, we had more fun. Here's why. You make a sword deck, building around Arthur as your glory card. You'll need a lot of strong 1 and 2 drops for its fanfare that also evolve. There are a lot of super strong 1 and 2 drops that evolve in the game, However, there are not so many super strong sword 1 and 2 drop evolves. Need about 15 or 16 of them for the deck to be very consistent. And past 10 or 12, you're actually starting to scrape the bottom of the barrel. In my sword-locked Gloryfinder deck, I've actually had to run the Owl at times because it was the best 16th 2-drop available to me. Let's also take Runecraft. You need over 20 spells to make the Chimera worth playing. Probably around 25. 30 is a bit too much. How many good Runecraft spells have ever been printed? As of the time of recording this, you'll find that past 20, you might even have to put in stuff like Golem Protection just to make up the numbers. And you know what? That's great. You get to play with cards that you would never see in a 1v1 deck. Some of them even quite bad. And it's a casual format. There's no problem with that. Now, there's one other new rule which our playgroup has put in place. This one's up to you. It's optional, but recommended. The following is the unofficial Gloryfinder ban list. The first card on our ban list is Azazel. Azazel is an oppressive and obnoxious card. It's too powerful and wraps the whole game around itself. Here's how it plays. Abysscraft deals 60 damage on turn 7. That's it. Any damage dealt before this is irrelevant. Any health gained before this is also irrelevant. When Abysscraft is on the table, the only correct strategy is for all 3 other players to rush them down first. This isn't fun for them or the Abysscraft player, unless you've got a really, competitive spirit. There's no thinking, no politics, which is an extremely important part of 4-player card games. Even if Azazel is not chosen as the Gloryfinder card and is the main deck, you still have to target them just in case they draw it. So, everybody just knows, without even speaking, to ignore everyone else and send everything into the Abysscraft player's face. I highly, highly recommend that this card is banned. Second card on our ban list, Olivia. Why ban Olivia? Olivia is just such a good generic powerful card that every deck runs it. No matter what your strategy, what your playstyle, Olivia is a must include in your deck. What really pushes it over the edge though is the discard ability. Every opponent discards a card from their hand is a major card advantage with 4 players. Forcing players to discard their cards is also a universally hated mechanic in any card game. Right now it's locked to Abysscraft, which is totally fine. However, Olivia gives it to every class, which is just bad thematically. So our group has banned it. It's too generic, it's in every single deck, and we're also sick of seeing it every game. Third card, Odin. I must admit it does feel bad to ban a Gloryfinder exclusive card, but Odin is just super powerful. It's a board wipe and a storm put together, costing only 8. Why would any deck not run this? Thematically as well, I don't like that this gives every class access to a generically good banish. But that's just me. Let's compare it to Bahamut for instance. Bahamut also affects you, also takes up a slot in the Evolve deck, and costs 9, and doesn't have Storm, and can't even attack if there's 2 or more things on the board. Odin just outclasses it in every way. Fourth and final card on our current ban list. This one might be a bit surprising. It's Lyriel. What? Lyriel? Why would you ban Lyriel? Let me explain my reason, as I'm the one who pushed very heavily for it. Lyriel, just like the previous two neutral cards, should be put into every single deck. I think most people underrate its power in this 4-player format. First off, deal 6 damage every turn, 2 to each opponent. Okay, strong, but not overpowered. Lashena does the same with her amulet, and she's not worth a ban. Second, it's never engaged. What you do is wait until the player just before you ends their turn, activate this quick ability, and it immediately untaps as you start your next turn. It's very hard to remove. You need something like a sail or a board wipe. Single target spells don't even deal with it that effectively, since it has a whopping 5 health. A lot of spells only deal 2, 3, 4 damage, so 5 health is just out of range of a lot of them. You often need 2 spells to deal with it. Okay, but Lashena Amulet is also hard to get rid of, right? You can't attack it. Third, your leader doesn't take ability damage. That's good. A little bit niche, but very good in the right circumstances. For instance, it hard counters Chimera Room, which I'm all for, by the way. But more concerningly, it hard counters itself. Let's pretend 3 players have Lyriel on the field. They don't take ability damage from each other, but the remaining person takes 6 damage every time around the table. Now, this is really funny, I have to admit, but is it a healthy play pattern? Assuming every deck runs Lyriel, which they should, this kind of situation happens more often than you think. Fourth, it costs 3. All these effects put together would be perfectly fine, I think, on a 6 or 7 cost card. We know this because Lashena's Amulet comes out turn 5 for a total of 6 PP. 4 for Lashena, 2 for the Amulet on the next turn. So, it's not the effects and stats and the immunity on their own which are the problem. It's the combination of everything on a 3 play point card. The fact that you can get all these effects on your very first turn, since you start with 3 play points, is just too much. Again, the ban list is totally up to you and your play group. Our philosophy is, if a neutral card is so generically good that it's in every deck, we will ban it. It just leads to more interesting games and more interesting deck building. As a side note, what is not on the ban list? You might be thinking about some cards that haven't been mentioned, but let me explain. Deepwood Anomaly. This card is 100% fine if locked to Forestcraft. Forest cannot abuse it with Storm or Aura or an extra turn, which is what happens in non-class locked Gloryfinder. And Forest will probably never be able to do this, because I don't think they would print a card like that to make the OTK legal and competitive 1v1. Bahamut. Touched on this a bit before. This card is generically good, and a lot of decks do run it, but it's not as egregious. Again, it affects you as well. Again, it's very expensive. Combo decks like Forest do not want to run a 9 PP board clear in their deck. Rosa Mechwing Angel. this is just a generically good card almost every deck runs. Rosa is the bell-ringer angel of Gloryfinder, and, well, we love her just as much. She's the perfect first turn play, a 2 PP evolution for 1, but it's not you high roll just because you open her. Same thing applies with Pure Hearted Singer. Very good card, almost every deck runs it, but not oppressive or annoying to see. These 2 neutral cards are a really nice turn 1 play, and no one's complained. All the other generically strong neutral cards are, from our experience, too expensive in terms of PP to warrant a ban. Think Lucifer, Grimnir, etc. So, the ban list. Completely optional, up to you, but recommended. Now, there's one very valid criticism about what I've laid out here. If I, as a player, do want to experience cross-class gameplay, what about that? Well, Bushiroad has just recently announced Cross-Class Constructed, where you can combine 2 classes in a deck. We had a similar thing in Digital Shadowverse, and it was a fun casual format. I don't see why it wouldn't work in the physical version. In fact, if your playgroup wants to, why don't you allow 2 or 3 class combinations in your Gloryfinder decks? Personally, it's not for me, but maybe you'll find it fun. I suspect that you may end up with the same problems as unrestricted cross-class, but I'm sure limiting it to 2 classes per deck would create some very interesting decks. Perhaps you'll have to add a bit more cards to the ban list. Maybe Deepwood Anomaly would have to be banned then, because of the Storm extra turn interaction, but I don't have any experience with that. Give it a go though, if you want to. To conclude, I like Gloryfinder. I think it's a fun format. More people should play it, and it has the potential to attract the casual player base. However, the current rules are bad. Decks should 100% be class locked, otherwise there is simply no variety and no reason to play. A ban list should be considered as well, even if it's just for Azazel. As a very casual player myself with no interest at all in competitive 1v1 Shadowverse Evolve, Gloryfinder is the perfect format for me and also my friends. As each new set comes out, I'm always looking for new cards to swap into my Gloryfinder decks. Without this, I don't think I would still be playing. I hope one day another Gloryfinder product comes out to give Forest and Dragon some love. However, to be honest, I'm not holding my breath, unfortunately. Despite this, I really hope Gloryfinder eventually succeeds. So that's why I'm here sharing my opinion. I'd also like to share the decks that I've constructed with these rules. Maybe even some gameplay as well. Look out for those videos. And that's it from me. Cheers.